Hi everyone, Leanne here from Jaded Blossom, and I have a fun watercolor card to share with you today. Hey, so I'm using Jaded Blossom's Tulips stamp set. This is the spotlight for April 2024, and that means that the stamp set, the bundle for the stamp set and the outline dies is on sale for $17.99 until April 30th while supplies last. Also, the stamps are on sale until the same time for $10.99, or the outline dies for $7.99 if you don't want to get the bundle. First, I'm stamping here onto Ranger watercolor paper on the rough side using spun sugar distress oxide ink, and I'm going to stamp the main image of the tulip. And what I do is I add the ink to the stamp, and then I spritz it with a little mini mister. There we go. Next, I'm going to stamp the next one in Tattered Rose. There we go. So this one's Tattered Rose, like I said, and I'm just going to repeat the process. So, add the ink cube to the stamp, spritz it with 3 little spritzes of water from the mini mister. There we go. And lastly, I'm using dried marigold to stamp this last one. You'll notice that I'm stamping on a foam mat, just to, gives a little bit of give when you're doing freehand stamping. There we go. And I'll do the same thing, sort of like a visual triangle, right? I did already stamp 2 backgrounds, but I stamped 4 blooms instead. So you'll see those when I'm putting the cards together a little bit later. And there we go. So that's dried marigold there. And there is my image. So, fun and easy stuff, right? Next, I'm going to use crushed olive distress ink with the leaves. I'm only going to use 1 layer of these leaves. Like there is a sort of like an accent layer that you can use, but I kind of like the way that they looked as is, so I left them. I will be adding the next layer on the flowers, however. So I'm just going to add these leaves kind of here and there. And this isn't an exact science. This is kind of like a messy watercolor look. I'm going to be adding some splatter or spatter, depends how you want to say it, to my background. So these do not have to be perfect in any way. And there we go. So just sort of spritzing and stamping, spritzing and stamping. So Jaded Blossom has been doing these spotlights, which is the nice thing is that if you want this stamp or this set, it's on sale, right? It's always good to get a sale. And then the design team tries to use that, that set or that bundle when they can. And that's what I'm doing today. So I'm just quickly, like I said, adding in the leaves. This is the other shape of leaf. And stamping. And like I said, this is going to be far from perfect. But I'm going to be making 4 sympathy cards today. It's always good to have sympathy cards in your stash. And I tend to like to use, floral images, butterflies, flora, fauna, that kind of thing, silhouettes. That's also nice. Just for a different look for sympathy cards. There we go. So kind of pretty, right? So it's really easy and I think very forgiving. So you can just sort of stamp. Now, Jaded Blossom has other flower stamps that you could do this with. They've got leaves. There's leaf stamps that you could do this with. All of those things, can work. Next, I'm adding some crushed olive ink, distress ink, to one of my acrylic blocks. And I'm just going to use a paintbrush to add a few little droplets. And I'm painting in the little stems. There is a stem stamp, but I figured it would just be easier just to quickly paint them in because these, it's not really rocket science. I'm just adding a stem in. And that way I don't have to mask anything because this is messy watercolor. You don't have to mask, right? There we go. And I'm going to do the same to this one here. So just a tiny little paintbrush, and I'm just going to quickly add in my stems where I think they'd go. But, it doesn't have to be perfect. Your eye kind of fills in what you expect, right? Now I'm going to add a few little droplets to the background. Like I said, I will be using, doing some spatter on the background as well. But for now, I'm actually placing it carefully. So at least I'll get some of that splatter or spatter where I want it. And then I will flick some on a little bit later with a different color. So there we go. Just added a bunch of different little droplets. And like I said, this will dry back as I'm as I'm getting things ready for this card. So there we go. And actually, you could have left it like this and skipped the next layer on the flower, because with the watercolor, you do kind of have a bit of a look of layers, but this adds a little something more. So for the pink, I'm using, remember the base was spun sugar, so now I'm using picked raspberry. There we go. And then the next one will be saltwater taffy. Oops, I'm sort of stamping them one at a time here. Sorry, guys. I probably could have just filmed myself doing one, but this is how I make, when I'm doing something like this, I kind of do an assembly line process. Okay, so this is the saltwater taffy now, that second layer for the tattered rose. And I'll mist that with my mini mister. There we go. And I let that sit a bit. Now, like I said, I find it works better on the rough side of the Distress watercolor cardstock, but that's just me. Now I'm going to add my next layer for the last one. So the last one, I use dried marigold, and then on top, the darker color will be abandoned coral. And there we go. And I'll do the same thing to these two here, finish them up. And then we will have 3 backgrounds. And like I said, I already had another one done, or another 2 done before this. So I'll have 4 cards to create once I get rolling. So I do put this off to the side and let it dry quite a bit. But I'm going to add some abandoned coral in a moment. I'm just going to add another, get this a little bit darker. There we go. There. Now this is abandoned coral just on some acetate. And I'm just going to pick it up with my little brush, and I'm going to add a few little droplets here and there, and then I will sort of spatter it on the background in a moment. Just because this is, like I said, a messy watercolor, we don't have to worry about this being perfect. But, I am kind of choosing where these little droplets are going, so, what can I say? It's hard for me. It's hard for me being a type A crazy person. There we go. So I will add a few more droplets, and then I will spatter it in a moment here. There we go. So I'm adding a few more little spots, and then we will be in business in a moment. There we go. And once I think I have enough, I will use it and spatter in just a second here. And here's the spatter. And I'm not too concerned. It'll dry back a bit. And I'm going to be doing some die cutting as well. Okay, so I put those aside and let them dry. I'm using our Stylized Rectangle dies along with Jaded Blossom's Wishing You Comfort stamp set and the Honeybee Stamps Love Letter 6-inch pad. So I went ahead and I'm cutting out these backgrounds. This is the ones that I just made. There we go. Cutting it with my Anna Griffin Mini Empress machine. And I do keep the edges because I'll use that for to fill in, some areas for some dimension. This is the ones that I did with 4. There we go. I use the same colors though. Just repeated one. And I'm just taping that down in place and running it through my die cutting machine. That's another blah, blah, blah. Another nice thing about this is that, if there's any warping from the water, this does flatten it out. Now I have some Paper Tray Ink Craft cardstock card bases cut at 4.25 by 11, scoring it at 5.5 inches with my Martha Stewart scoreboard and my Teflon bone folder. There we go. And I tend to make, when I do cards like this, I try to do it assembly line style, So I made 4 this time. There we go. I'm just reinforcing that fold here with that Teflon bone folder. There. working on my Stampin' Up! Pad. All the usual things. So this is the pattern paper that I'm using from that Love Letter 6-inch pad from Honeybee. And I'm going to cut it in half at 3 inches. And then the length is going to be 1/8 of an inch shorter than an A2 size card front, so whatever that is. And I'm trimming it off here. So the lightest color, there we go, will be on the bottom, and I'm going to use those leftover slices for some sentiments. And I did cut out some mini tag dies, 3. That's the smallest one in that shape. Cut out of paper tray ink craft cardstock. And I'm going to use these little, like the little light leftover pieces to stamp my sentiment on the front of each card. And it will say "With Love." That's from that Comfort stamp set using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink and my Misty. And then I will trim it so it, you know, it's in the same shape as that little tag that I cut out, because I did use the smallest one of the tag. Do you know what I mean? If you use like the 2 sizes, they layer together perfectly, but I didn't want it to be that big on my card front, so that's why I decided to use the smaller one and then do this. So there we go, using my Misty. Now I'm stamping on the inside of each card. My heart is with you in your time of sorrow. And stamping in that same VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And the paper is Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock cut at 4 by 5 1/4 inches. So I'm just sort of, you know, making sure it stamps well. And there is a waffle flower grip mat in there that's working quite well. So this is how I get the angle. I'm just going to layer that up, and I'm going to trim. There we go. Add the angle. And now I'm going to layer them all together and trim all of the paper off at the same angle using a pair of scissors. There we go. And then that means that those will fit onto the little tags that I cut out. Now I'm going to use this plaid paper, and I'm just going to put a 1-inch strip in each card front, or on the inside of each card. So just 1-inch strips. Just add something in there, right? You could have done some stamping inside. That would have worked as well. There we go. And now I will be putting my card together. So I'm going to add on this pattern paper with some ATG tape here. Sorry, I've got my camera my camera closer to my card today, and I do hit it a couple of times with my ATG tape or my ATG gun. So, you know, please forgive me if you're motion sick, right? So I'm going to add in. Now I'll add on my stamped background. Trying to line up where I'm going to put it. There we go. There, so it's all nice and flat. On the inside, we'll add where you write. Now, obviously, you could have stamped right on the inside of this card front if you want, or card if you wanted to, because you can write on craft. You can see that. But I like adding the white liner. I just think it looks, I don't know, a little bit more finished, I guess. So now I'm going to add my strip of paper on the inside. Trying to line it up. And I will trim off the overhang with a pair of scissors. And then you will have this, that's the inside. Now I'm going to use a few little strips of this paper because there is a little gap between my watercolor background and the edge of the card, and I'm going to have the tag with the sentiment kind of straddling that, and I don't want it to dip. So I'm going to figure out where my little tag's going to end up, and then I'm going to add my little filler strip in there. Trying to figure out where I want to put it. Probably right about there on that one anyway. So I'm going to add my sentiment onto that mini tag dies 3 that I cut out. And I will trim off that overhang with a pair of scissors in a minute. I'm going to add 1/8 of an inch score tape to the back of this strip. And then I'm going to use that as filler on my card front. I'm just sort of trimming them to the size that I need. And then I will fill in that little spot in between my watercolor background and the edge of my card base, where my tag is going to end up. Just a way of keeping things level. And I'm not popping anything up on this card, so I just thought that would keep things nice and easy. So I'm just going to peel off my score tape. And then this is where I'm adding it using my reverse tweezers, sort of right in there. And then that will allow me to keep my sentiment nice and level. There we go. I'll line that up. And then I'll trim off that overhang with a pair of scissors. And that's basically what the card's going to look like. And I'll do the same with the other ones now. And there we go. I'm just using that same ATG tape. And adding it to my card front, and then I'll do the exact same thing. So this was a really easy set of sympathy cards, I think. You could do the watercolor, your watercolor background, one day while you're messing around and leave them to dry and work on the rest of the card another day. Whatever you want to do. There we go. And I'll do the same thing with this little sentiment. I just think this is a really pretty little stamp set. And great for this purpose, I think. Although these would make really pretty little Mother's Day cards or thank you cards, what have you, anything you want. There is where that sentiment's going to go. I'm trying not to overlap too much. Or if I've got a little boo-boo I've got to cover, that's where my sentiment will end up, right? And then we will trim off the overhang, like I said, with a pair of scissors. And we keep on creating. There we go. So like I said, easy peasy stuff. So there's that. We're going to add on my little fast watercolor background. There we go. And get things lined up. There it is. And then I will add my little sentiment again with that ATG tape again. There we go. And there you have it. I'm going to go in the upper right-hand corner this time. So I'll add my little filler piece in there. There it is. And oops, I cut it a little too long, so I've got to trim. I trimmed it a little bit with a pair of scissors. I peeled it up. And there's my last little tag. So isn't that easy? Super fun and easy. Here we go. Oops, I've got one more. I lied. One more. So we'll talk about other things while I do this. So I've actually done this type of card design with other Jaded Blossom floral stamps. So, you can check that out. They're probably on Instagram and stuff like that. So you can do this with any flower stamp, usually, as long as there's a solid image, right? And like I said, fast and easy cards. I kind of forget to do this sometimes. When you do something a lot and then you get onto other things and you kind of forget about the techniques that you used in the past. This was always a good one. And there we go. Oh, and of course I got this one a little bit too long as well, so I'll just trim it off a bit. And of course nothing like a doorbell right in the middle of filming, right? Sorry guys. So I'm just going to add my little tag to this last one here. And I'll trim off that overhang with a pair of scissors again. And there we go. So adding that 1-inch strip to the inside of all of my cards now. So, right at the bottom for some half an inch up, whatever you like. And there are my 4 card designs. And I'm going to pull out my Nouveau Jewel Drops in Peach Sorbet. Now, remember the trick to these is you want them nice and warm. And, I know this is TMI, but I usually tuck mine in my bra or my pocket or something like that while I'm creating, just to get them nice and warm so they start flowing well. I do live in Canada. It's cold up here. And I'm just going to add those to my card. The only trick is you want to put these to the side and not touch them. So thank you everyone for stopping by. Be sure to hop on over to the Jaded Blossom blog, Be Inspired by the Team. The Jaded Blossom store to get your hands on these amazing products and, you know, to take advantage of that spotlight sale for April. Remember, only while supplies last until April 30th, like I said. So thank you for watching, and we will see you soon in my next video. Bye, everybody.